Hi there, I'm Dani Henderson, spiritualtherapist.com, and today I'm in Mexico, in Playa del Carmen, with my good friend Asha Dealman. And last night we were hanging out together, and we've both been on such a journey, how we met, and the indigenous information that we've both garnered over our lifetimes, especially Asha here, who has a wonderful kind of Mayan cosmology to share with you. We're all coming into a time of remembering, recognizing that at the time we're in, we need all these different tales and stories of past culture to come in and support us. And so I'm going to introduce my friend. Hello, welcome, Asha Dealman.
I'm so delighted to be here, Dani. It's really special to have you here in my home in the Mayan Riviera. We don't get to hang out as much as we used to when we were both together in Costa Rica. So it's really precious time here right now.
It really is. It really is. And how we met was we both came to Costa Rica in 2020 to try and get out of the nonsense that was happening in the world. We were both looking for community, for free thinkers, for people that weren't scared of dying, for people that weren't doing as their governments or non-governments or non-leadership was trying to enforce. And that was quite an amazing story, wasn't it? How we
It was, because I mean, where we landed wasn't quite what we thought we were moving toward. Nonetheless, so there were lessons along the way, and it was more, where we first landed was more of a stepping stone to where we originally spent most of the year that we had together in Costa Rica.
Yeah, that was amazing.
Yeah.
So when we met at this it was kind of like, it was the most beautiful hotel. It was up in Pierre Zeledon, and it was 5-star. And I remember, because like a lot of you, very sensitive to energy, very sensitive to land, Asha herself too. And I remember walking on the land at this exquisite resort that was full of like-minded people, and the land was dead. The land was dead and the land was cursed. Anyway, so I left quickly, and then you left soon after, and we found our way to a town in Costa Rica up towards Nosara and Tamarindo. I learned so much about the Mayan culture from Asha, because she studied it, lived it, and has a very special sacred culture information she's going to share with you. And before I hand over to her, Asha will be at the conference in October, and she'll be standing on stage with the Mayan shaman Quetzal Shah. She'll be translating for him from Spanish to English, but also she brings her own wealth of knowledge too. So my darling, we were sitting last night talking about the solar flash, and I was saying I'm really upset with how irresponsible I feel people are scaring the public around the world. They're like, oh my God, a solar flash, oh my God. It's so wrong and so disgusting to me, because it puts people down in fear rather than allows them to really look forward to something beautiful and amazing happening. So can you just take over and share your knowledge, please?
Yeah, well, which is where I sort of jumped in and said, you know, on the contrary, the solar event, whatever that may end up looking like, it may not be a flare, it may not be a flash. In fact, the Mayan shamans that I studied with in both in Mexico and in Guatemala had a very different concept of what this solar event would look like. And the Maya have a long oral history of previous events at the end of each solar cycle. So they call these cycles the sun cycles. And according to the Maya, we're approaching the 5th sun. So we're just in the last phases of the old cycle of the darkness and chaos at the end of one cycle before a new cycle begins, which the Maya referred to as the golden age of light, like literally the age of enlightenment for humanity. So this is actually, I mean, we all know it's an exciting time to be on Earth for many reasons. I mean, of course, you know, this is a much perhaps coveted opportunity to be here in human form as consciousness, as spirit, for this great awakening that's happening. And it's literally, I mean, it's a great awakening in terms of what we've all been experiencing the past 2 years, and covering all the darkness and the programming and the, you know, the planning of the dark ones around what they want to do with our future. But it's literally, we're in the midst of a much greater awakening, a bigger awakening that has to do with the sun and our connection to the rest of the cosmos, the Pleiades, the center of our galaxy. I mean, the Maya were so expansive in their understanding of what the cosmos is all about, what the universe is all about. I mean, they had calendars that they had names for periods of time in their calendars that go back millions of years, not thousands of years,
course,
but
yes.
millions of years.
Yeah.
And so, so we can look to cultures like the Maya for a greater understanding of what may be going on right now. And it's certainly very exciting and not to be feared.
You know, it's amazing to me, like you've just mentioned the fifth sun. Huna Flash talks about Lemuria 5 rising. When I look at some of my galactic friends and what they're sharing with us, there's so much of all the different cultures that links together.
Right.
That's why yes, go ahead.
Sorry, I just need to correct myself for a moment, because there's this contradiction between the Aztec teachings and the Maya teachings. So the Aztec talk about the fifth sun. For the Maya, we're already in the fifth sun and we're entering the sixth sun. So there's a little bit of difference there. Like people tend to lump the Aztec calendar and the Mayan calendars all together and assume that they're exactly on the same page. And while there are many similarities between the cultures, they're not exactly on the same page. So I just want to clarify.
So beautiful. Yeah, it's so wonderful, all this information that's coming to the fore. And you know, it's up to us to use our discernment. You know, it's like if you've believed every single thing that you were ever taught by your parents or your teachers growing up, you know that they told lots of lies because they were told lots of lies, or you're told to believe something like the Easter Bunny, for example, or fairies. And well, I mean, the Easter Bunny doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned, but the fairies definitely do. And then we're told at 7-8, no, it's a lie. We just told you that. And, you know, so we're kind of coming back to reclaiming ourselves, our hearts, our minds, and deciding, well, what do I think? What do I believe? What did I experience? What did I see?
My personal experience
yes.
about? Yeah.
I think that's what this whole time we're in is about. What do I feel, the individual soul in this body? There's so many ways to go here. Could you share with us, and most people have never heard of what we're going to share right now, and it's all coming through ashagayledieleman, my friend. Can you share with us the Yoka Maya structure?
Well, I want to say first, I'm not the only one, but there are very few of us who have been exposed to this information about Yoka Maya, because it is indigenous Mayan information that was kept secret for good reason for many centuries, all through the Spanish invasion of Mesoamerica and all of that, and for good reason. They were protecting their sacred knowledge.
Yeah.
But I had the very good fortune in the mid-90s of well, first in the mid-90s, I was a yoga teacher. I had my yoga studio in Canada, and I was bringing groups of students to the Mayan Riviera for yoga vacations, just to get out of the cold in Canada and experience the warmth
bloody
of the
cold
sun.
in Canada.
Bloody cold.
I've lived there for 2 years. I know what Calgary I lived in.
Oh yes,
Blooming freezing.
Bloody cold. And Winnipeg I lived in, so there you go. Even colder. Well, I'm kind of getting out of the picture here.
Yeah, it keeps spinning round.
Yeah.
It's very windy here. Very windy on the balcony here in Playa del Carmen.
Anyway, during that period of time, we made a visit to Chichen Itza, and it's obligatory when you come here as a tourist to go and visit at least one of the tourist sites, and Chichen Itza is one of the better known ones. So we made a trip to Chichen Itza, and at that time I knew nothing about the Maya, the Pleiades, shamanism, none of it at all. And so we had a really good tour guide, and he talked about the connection between the Pleiades and the Maya, and just how advanced this culture was with their knowledge of astronomy and mathematics and their art and just all of it. And so it really, really got me excited about Mayan culture and piqued my curiosity. And when I went home, I started investigating, thinking about what is this connection with the Pleiades? I keep hearing about it. What's this all about? Woo, almost blew away there. Anyway, I went to our local New Age bookstore called Prairie Sky Books, and the books were like literally falling off the shelf, the proverbial shelf.
Magic.
Yeah, and so the first couple of books that came to me about the Pleiades was Barbara Handclough, The Pleiadian Agenda, and I love her work and had the opportunity to meet her later. And Barbara Marciniak, Bringers of Dawn. And so they were both very inspirational and made that connection. And as I was studying that and meditating on it, I found myself being called to go back to Chichen Itza, to the Mayans for the spring equinox. And I mean, I had just returned maybe 2 weeks before from a trip. So it wasn't a logical, you know, what definitely wasn't coming from my intellect or from any concern about my pocketbook whatsoever, right. Because my pocketbook was already empty from that first experience. But I've known not to make money the priority in this kind of a journey, you know. So anyway, I just went because Spirit was telling me I would meet my Mayan teacher if I went for the spring equinox. And that's exactly what happened. And when I went to Chichen Itza that time, this was 96, I believe, there must have been 50,000 people at Chichen Itza celebrating the spring equinox, because that's like the Mayan New Year. It's springtime when everything comes back to life. And it's also when this amazing phenomena, you were there, Dani, but you haven't seen the serpent come down at equinox time yet, where the feathered serpent of Kukulkan descends down the steps of the pyramid. There are like 7 levels until it arrives back down to earth. So it's coming from the cosmos, from the heavens, and bringing solar knowledge, cosmic information with it as it descends. You know, it's symbolic of that. So all these people were gathered to see that event, and I was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to find my Mayan teacher? There's so many Mayans there, but nobody was standing out as a teacher or a leader in that role.
Can you share how big? Just so people that have never heard of Chichen Itza, it's a beautiful sacred place with lots of Mayan temples and pyramids. Can you describe to us like the feeling of it and how big it is, and where certain temples and you know, buildings are, for want of a better expression?
Yeah, well, it spans several miles actually. I mean, I forget how many thousands of people the city attached to Chichen Itza actually housed, you know, back in the day, like at around, you know, in 800 AD, 1000 AD. And the main pyramid there, the 4-sided stepped pyramid of Chichen Itza that the archaeologists named El Castillo, but it's actually the pyramid of Kukulkan because of the serpent, you know, what I just described about what happens with the serpent. It was a temple of initiation. So the initiates would climb the stairs to the very top of the pyramid, and special ceremonies and initiations would take place there. And then they would symbolically descend back down the stairs of the pyramid, bringing whatever attainment, whatever wisdom they'd found on that journey down to people, down to earth with them. So there's that pyramid, and within that pyramid is a much older pyramid. I don't even know how many thousands of year old. So it's a pyramid built on top of a smaller pyramid with a big cenote underneath, a sacred well. All over the Maya lands, there are these cenotes everywhere. They're like freshwater sinkholes, yeah.
And you can swim in them, and we swam in them this year.
And some of them are in caves. The one we went to was a cave, actually.
We went to 2. And then Quetzalcoatl was with us.
Quetzalcoatl.
Oh, I was calling Quetzalcoatl because his son got it. I was thinking that way. Quetzalcoatl was with us, and it was so funny. We were in this underground cenote where you go downstairs into a mountain, and it was all rock above us, and there was barely an opening because some of the cenotes, it's C-E-N-O-T-E, is it not the spelling? Cenote, which is a thousands and thousands of, maybe millions of years old sinkhole with water in it. And we went into the darker one, and Quetzal was off in the corner. It would have water ceremony, and you could hear him, you know, when we were at Chichen Itza. And I've spoken about this with people in other broadcasts. It says, now here's Asha, here she is, she's real. I did not make that story up. And she'll be at our conference in October. But we went to Chichen Itza with your twin daughters, who are Mayan Gemini women, right? Mayan Gemini twins. It's really quite unusual. And
Mayan Dutch,
yes, even more. And we sat down, and we were sitting in front of, so when you go into Chichen Itza, is massive. It's just massive. And I heard two stories. Number one, we heard a story about a woman who was like, she ran up the stairs of the serpent temple because when you can see a serpent head coming from the top to the bottom on both sides. That's what Asha was referring to. And this woman, she goes running up now. You can't, it's very steep, little steps all the way up to a room, a square room at the top. And this woman, she ran up there and she got arrested. Now, my friend Susie Duffy, she was allowed to go there a few years ago when you could go up. So she went all the way up and she said, and this is amazing, and I never knew this. She said, when you look down from the top of that pyramid, you can't see the steps. It's so cleverly designed, mathematically perfect, that gives an illusory effect of you're going to fall. Just took her about 2 hours to get down. She shit herself. But yeah, isn't that amazing? So when we went from the main serpent temple and we went round the corner to the observatory. There's an ancient observatory round the back. And then we sat with Ketsa, you, Ketsa, the girls and me, and he went into chanting, and it was like 3 different people were coming out of him. And then you were doing your thing. What were you doing?
Well, he's amazing. I mean, he downloads star language. It's not even, you know, the Mayan language. It's from whatever source he may be tapping into in that moment. He, you know, this is what Ketsa Shah's been doing this all his life, traveling to serious sacred sites all over the world and downloading the codes, the sacred codes, the information, what the site was, you know, used for, what star beings they're connected to, and in communication with those beings. So this just happens to him naturally whenever, you know, he connects with the energy. And what was I doing? I mean, I think I was just what I do is I just make tone. I make different sounds, whatever comes through, and it's a frequency transmission of frequency, I would say, more than specific information. But of course, frequency carries information. So somewhere in there is something coming through.
It was pretty amazing to see you guys, a family. Your kids were laying down in trance. You and Ketsa are performing this beautiful, and it was all impromptu. None of us planned it. We just went there for the day. It was just so beautiful. And and then I remember Ketsa saying that he'd had his first extraterrestrial experience at the temple we were at, like round the corner. So I'm a bit naughty, and there were lots of guards around, so I just kind of went under the little rope. But nobody got hurt, nobody died, nothing was harmed in that process. Don't worry, you don't need to have a lie down.
Just Dani being Dani.
Yeah, I'm a bit naughty, but you know, you can't. It's just
no, but we all do.
Yeah, a curiosity to go, and I went around and I could feel that no one's been back there for a while. It was just like walking around the side of an ancient temple or ancient castle, and there was kind of dead energy there. And then I kind of shit myself a bit and thought, I don't want to get thrown out of here. It's not worth it. And
that's the much older part of Chichen Itza that isn't part of the official tour.
Right, which is my point. You see, even then, guys, you go to Chichen Itza, you see the big green lawn, you see the beautiful pyramids, but you don't know if you're facing it and you go off to the right, you wiggle around the back, there's an ancient observatory that was built to look at the stars. That
is part of the tour, but but then beyond the observatory and, you know, kind of beyond where it's roped off, there's a whole other section.
And it's just so naughty of them to keep all of this from us. It's like when I was in Egypt, I realized that once you get to somewhere, you learn everything when you're physically there. But in the West, in particular, so much is kept from us. It's so bossy around the world. Knock it off. It's time to share everything. And in doing that, you, a white woman, a blue-eyed, blonde, Dutch-Canadian white woman, has so much information to share on these ancient cultures. Where would you like to go next?
Well, where I was going with that story of meeting my Mayan teacher was I finally sat down to meditate and just kind of cleared my mind, and I let the experience come to me rather than going looking for it. The little secret to transformation there. Anyway, and when I opened my eyes, there was this huge circle of people all dressed in white, and this beautiful Mayan man in the center, who was clearly the leader of whatever ceremony was going on, speaking and chanting, and all of this was happening right in front of me. So I was like, there's my cue. And so I joined in on whatever they were doing, the ceremony, and then This was Elder Hunbatsman, who is a Mayan daykeeper, and through his family lineage, many generations in the Maya lands. And so I met Hunbatsman. I met many people that were gathered from all over the world that were being drawn to the Mayan temples at this time, starting in the mid-90s, and of course more and more and more today. I mean, they're now building a bullet train to take people faster to all the pyramid sites, but that's another story that's kind of crazy. But anyway, I met Hunbatsman, and he invited me to tour with them for the rest of the week, all over the Maya lands, to Uxmal, to Maya Koba, to Koba, to Tulum, down into Palenque. I mean, we went all these amazing places, and at each one we did ceremonies. Each one was like a mini initiation, and we were able to climb the pyramids and have that experience of how that was done in a ceremonial way. You climb up the steps of a pyramid in a pattern like a serpent, ascending and then descending back down. So there were many magical experiences, but it's Hunbatsman who was the source of this very specific information that I was shared about Yoga Maya. And at that time in the mid-90s, as I was going on that tour, I was a yoga teacher, and so I was looking around at all the symbology of, like, the serpent coming down, there's 7 levels, there's 7 stars in the Pleiadian constellation, and we have 7, chakras inside of us, and all of these serpent references everywhere. And, serpents in this time, in social media and stuff, in alternative media anyway, have kind of been given a bit of a bum rap. It's a very confusing kind of spiritual, hodgepodge that we're exposed to these days. And we hear serpent and we immediately think, reptilian, draconian, bad.
Bad, Adam and Eve, yeah, it's all, yeah.
Yeah, but in the yogic tradition from India, through the early Vedic period, of course, the serpent was representative of wisdom and of transformation. The Buddha, statues of the Buddha have the big hooded cobra over top of his head, and he's protected by the serpent of wisdom and enlightened by the serpent of wisdom. And so many other Vedic gods are depicted with serpents. And so it's a very important part. Serpents are very significant in the yoga tradition. We have Bhujangasana, the cobra pose, where you start off on your belly and then you rise up and you ascend, reaching for your potential. And so I was, when I saw all the serpent symbolism, I kept turning to Hunbatsman and going, this is about yoga, isn't it? Like, did the Maya know about yoga? Like, what, what's really going on here? Like, and so he's like, oh, I'm going to share something with you that I haven't shared with many people. I mean, after that period, he did share it with, more people than myself. But, I was one of the first to receive the information in the mid-90s about how indeed the ancient Maya did have a yoga tradition. And when he told me that, it absolutely blew my mind. It's like, because we have a very strong tradition, a very strong uninterrupted tradition from India through all the Vedic scriptures and the Upanishads and the Bhagavad Gita. And, there's a lot of philosophy built around the tradition of yoga with that they are rightfully very proud of. But I don't know that very many people have been exposed to the concept that yoga existed outside of India, at least definitely not in that time. I think more people are contemplating it now, but we had after that I discovered that the ancient Egyptians practiced some form of yoga and had an idea of the energy body, the light body, the prana body that's similar to the yogis. And so when he started to share this with me, I was like, wow, this is mind-blowing. And not only that, yoga, he talked about chakras, the 7 centers within the body, and then they have an 8th and a 9th in the Mayan tradition. But chakras, kultanlilni, it's really a mouthful, kundalini, and the mantra Om. And it was just like way too many coincidences and names and so forth that were in common. So I was like, something's really happening here. And Hunbats was always hosting Tibetan lamas and people coming over. Like there was clearly this affinity with the Tibetans and with culture from that part of the world. And yet, you know, our historians and our archaeologists will tell us that these cultures could not have possibly had any contact, you know, way back.
Because they know the modern day people in the world. They've got the answers to everything, guys. Let's listen to them.
Even though in Vedic scripture and art and depictions, we have the Vimanas, the flying Vimanas and the chariots of the gods. You know, all the gods traveled around in these flying ships of some kind.
Dragons.
Yeah. So we don't really know whether it was that way, that there was contact way back, or whether they actually traveled by ship. There's evidence of that perhaps they were traveling by water, or maybe they were just connecting through consciousness, through the field of consciousness. And, you know, that can be another reason for the similarities. They were tapping into the same source of knowledge. But anyway, it blew my mind. It continued to blow my mind. Back then, not many people were interested, though. I thought I brought it back to my yoga community back in Canada, and then, you know, it didn't really land. They were like, you know.
That's terrible. I could just imagine you being so excited, like, oh my God, I figured out some secrets on the planet I've been shared with this ancient magic knowledge, this cosmology. And no one's like, yeah, whatever. What's happening? What was on television at that time? Days of Our Lives. Oh my word.
And I can't even tell you how many times that's happened to me in my life, that I've like stumbled on something, discovered something, and we get all excited, and then it's like, oh, but what do I do with it? It's like ahead of its time usually.
Yes.
And so I feel like this information was 20 years ahead of its time, and the time is now to be sharing it. And Dani was one of the few people who, like, when I shared some of this with her back in Costa Rica when we first met, she was like gobsmacked, and she's like, girl, why are you not sharing this information with people and shouting it from the rooftops? And I was kind of like, well, I tried, and you know, nobody's listening, nobody wants to hear it.
They're listening now. They're listening now. Because aren't we just all so hungry for, you know, and I say to the audience, aren't you guys just so hungry for to marry everything together, to put all these pieces together, even for yourselves, like Shala, Chakra? It's just every single religion without exception. You know, the ancient religions, they all have very similar stories. We've just been manufactured and remarketed here and remarketed there. And, you know, you can choose to be offended if you like, and that's a waste of your time, because that means that you're stuck in the matrix and stuck in the system. But this information is so beautiful, and it largely evolves around this beautiful galactic center of which we are part of, you know. And we wanted to go into some of the symbolism that, like, for example, I've shared many times that if you look at the swastika, that wasn't designed by Hitler. That was taken when he saw it in an ancient Hindu temple. That sign of the swastika, Hitler came along and he reversed it. And that's what the dark ones do. They'll take the love and the light and they'll flip it round to the polar opposite side. But so we go around the world and we see all these amazing symbologies, iconographies, pictographs, hieroglyphs, or whatever. And so I would like you to share some of the actual symbols and signs that you've seen in terms of symbology and how you can relate that to the Yoga Maya.
Yeah, well, just on that symbol of the swastika, it's a sacred symbol in India, and it's a sacred symbol, of course, in the Maya lands for the Maya. In fact, it's a good luck symbol. So on the, you know, what do you call it? On the truckers on the highway have those rubber flaps, you know, in the back of their tire, mud flaps, I guess, or something. They often have the swastika, that symbol, on their mud flaps, because it's a good luck symbol that they're carrying with them. So,
remember, it's around the right way, though, guys. You want to be pulling in inversion energy.
And well, there's lots of things, but the calendar itself, the sacred numbers, the two numbers that are most sacred to the Maya are the number 13 and the number 20, because that corresponds with the main Zolkin calendar, which is a calendar of 260 days. And that was the calendar that was considered the more kind of spiritual calendar that you would follow. There are like 20 months or signs and 13 numbers. And from those 20 signs and 13 numbers, you get Mayan astrology, which has some similarities to Western astrology and Vedic astrology, but a little different. But there's a whole system of Mayan astrology that, of course, emerged out of their study of the stars and their close connection of the stars. But so the number 13 is sacred. Whereas here in the West, it's like, ooh, number 13, it's bad luck. And, there's many associations with that number, but that's just an example of one of the ways that
the West is corrupted and the lies that we're told consistently. I wonder myself if, Galileo and Copernicus, who were past astrologers, astronomers, I wonder who they studied and who they referenced. And, Nostradamus or Nostradamus, the great scryer, the great prophet, who actually, a lot of you do know this, but Nostradamus was a speaker, ancient, one of the men that we are all encouraged to kind of read up on. And one of the things he did was he would write, he called them quatrains, and they were 4 lines of a prophecy. And it's so interesting when you go back and look at some of his quatrains that he was actually predicting and prophesizing. What is it also called? The clair cognoscizing, which is prophesizing. There will be somebody called Hitler, he called Hitler. It's just so interesting. And, for me, I'm witnessing with people like you and your ancient knowledge and the way that knowledge is coming forward for us. I'm witnessing in real time now, everything, all the timelines collapsing into one. All of the timelines collapsing into one. And the other thing to think about, guys, when you're listening to Asha and her amazing information and her intel, is that we have been lied to. How do we really know there are 8 billion people on the planet? Did you know there are other countries and land masses that aren't on our maps? Did you know that? It's true. It's absolutely true. There's so much that we have been controlled from that, no more, like cats out the bag, whatever you want to say. And it's just so lovely to share all this information in the different ways that we get it.
Well, and on that note, another kind of thing going around out there that is maybe you could label as misinformation, but certainly misleading, is this concept that, what the Maya and the ancient Vedic Indians were doing is solar worship, that their deity was the sun and they were worshiping the sun. And then, the Nazis had the black sun. And so that sort of concept got corrupted and sort of now, like, not only is culture as a whole sort of training us to be afraid of the sun, like, ooh, solar rays bad, you're going to get cancer and all that, when really it's quite the contrary.
This life-giving thing we have.
Yeah. Those rays of light carry information. They are, like you say, life-giving, and also carry the codes of our evolution, with them, as humanity and all life on the living planet that we're on itself. But anyway, so, the sun and this idea of sun worship has sort of been taken a bit of a negative twist, and particularly when you take it into some of the Christian teachings where, Christians like to believe that their God is the only God, or their concept of God is the only God. And I was raised in Protestant, Christianity and with all of that information. But, somehow in my teen years, I began to expand my thinking and to realize that, there were all these amazing cultures around the world, and they had very similar concepts of what God is. And perhaps we were taking the Bible a little too literally. And, especially when I learned about the Nicene Council and the bishops in, 400 AD, who decided to take certain books out of the Bible and certain information out of the books that are remaining, and any evidence of reincarnation or the inner teachings of the amazing Christ teachings out of the Bible. And so the Bible is a very sacred book, but it's missing a lot, in my opinion, and the opinion of many scholars and many people around the world. So, but in the Christian tradition, that, you know, sun worship would be considered to be a form of idol worship. You know, you're not worshiping the one God. And, you know, it's really, I think, a misunderstanding of what ancient peoples were about. I mean, of course, ancient peoples all worship the sun as the source of light. You know, I mean, that's clear. But the sun is so much more than that. And, you know, that's what I really got into with the teachings through Hunbatsmen and other Mayan shamans and teachers that I met over the years. You know, the sun is our connection. It's the portal to the cosmos for humanity and for our entire solar system. It's like it brings frequencies from the rest of the galaxy and the universe at large and steps it down into a frequency that we as humans and as life on this planet can receive and can manage. And it's also, I mean, it's so many things. I mean, I think it's the portal that star beings may be traveling to arrive in our dimension.
Yeah.
And for the Maya, you know, we talked about the 7 chakras and the 7 centers of light, sparks of light, literally within our subtle anatomy, within our energy body or our prana body. And for the Maya, our sun, our star, is the 8th star of the Pleiadian star system.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, and for the Maya, the Pleiades were very sacred. I mean, they have the whole Zolkin calendar system that tracks the movements of the Pleiades over many, you know, millions of years of cycles and so forth. And so for the Maya, the Pleiades was the heart of the universe. And very sacred. So when the Maya worked with the sun, yes, they were working with the solar energy and the solar wind, receiving it through their pranayama breathing techniques and the meditations that they would do and the ceremonies that they would do to chant the name of the sun, King, the name of the sun, and invite that solar energy to ignite and awaken their Kundalini ascension vehicle of the 7 lights, the chakras, represented as the feather serpent. Here's another you know, place where the Vedic tradition and the Mayan traditions of yoga coincide, because they both have this idea of the serpent energy being dormant at the base of the spine, and when activated through meditation practices, through initiatic kinds of experiences, often having to do with the sun. I mean, we salute the sun in yoga. We have the Gayatri mantra, which is all about venerating the sacredness of the sun. And so when that happens in the Kundalini, that serpent energy gets activated and rises up and purifies the chakras and eventually arrives in the crown chakra. In the Mayan tradition, that is Kukulkan, the sacred feathered serpent gaining its wings. It's about you're learning to fly, you're gaining your wings. The serpent is transforming and becoming this sacred, you know, being of the feathered serpent that can then access other dimensions of the cosmos. And through consciousness, we have the opportunity to travel into other dimensions and time travel and remote view and, you know, visit other timelines and, you know, so much that is possible when that energy is activated and awakened, you know, within us.
It's so beautiful. You're raising so many amazing thoughts. And I know that people will be thinking, hang on, she said Kundalini, what's that? What's prana? You mentioned the Vedas, which are the Indian, you mentioned the Mayas and the Aztecs. Can you briefly tell people watching, how do we separate Mayan technology and culture from Aztec technology and culture?
You mean in terms of yoga or
just in general?
Well, the traditions are very distinct and different. Like, even though there are these similarities in the understanding of the process as a whole and these sacred mantras and so forth that are similar, there's also a lot of differences. Many different mantras, hand mudras that are used in the Mayan system that are very different from India. And also the way that the physical postures or asanas, we call them in the Indian tradition, are utilized. So you know, from India, we have the great tradition of Hatha yoga that emerged, you know, out of many thousands of years of yogic history, into this very elaborate system of physical practices and pranayama and meditation practices that are about transforming one physically, emotionally, energetically, mentally, and attaining, you know, one's highest self, you know, resulting in the process of enlightenment and the kind of, you know, cosmic consciousness that we're talking about. So the yoga tradition from India has a very distinct, you know, process and way that the postures are practiced, very different from the Mayan tradition, where they were practiced in more of a ceremonial shamanic kind of a form. So the postures are very different, and they're very simple. And we have many statues and art depictions of what those postures are, some from the Mayan tradition and others from, maybe some from the Aztec, and also from the Olmecs, like older Mesoamerican cultures that we can kind of all group coming from the same root culture.
Mesoamerican cultures is another beautiful collective, guys, for you that want to do some more study, Mesoamerican cultures. Asha, you've mentioned the serpent a few times. A lot of people, especially hard-wired Christians, are coming to understand there's much more to life than just what the Bible says. They're worrying less about going to hell as terrible sinners. I mean, goodness, what a terrible legacy to have to be born into a religion, as I was, that forces you to be so fearful all of the time. And if you don't do as the man tells you, you're going to go to hell and burn forever. It's just complete bollocks as far as I'm concerned. And, you know, if you're offended, then you're offended. I don't mean any offense to anyone. This is my own personal journey and why I take time sitting with beautiful scholars and, you know, academics and just people who've experienced these different cultures and have been gifted with hidden knowledge. I mean, Ombudsman gave you something so special that you're beautifully expressing with us here. You mentioned the serpent. I don't know how many people out there are aware of the actual symbol for health across the world as the caduceus or the caduceus. Could you share with us, connecting that to Kundalini, what Kundalini is, where it's found and what it is, please? Just for those that don't know briefly.
Well, the symbol of the caduceus obviously references back to some ancient esoteric information and tradition. And whoever, you know, used that symbol to symbolize medicine obviously knew a lot of the sort of thing that we're talking about, because the staff of the caduceus represents the central channel of our, well, first our spinal column, and then in the subtle anatomy, which is the energetic prana body, the electromagnetic field that our bodies emanate, because we are electrical beings. You know, our brain is electrical. Our heart is obviously electrical. I mean, if you have a heart attack, how do they bring you back to life? They jolt you with electricity. And then, you know, at the most atomic and some subatomic levels of, you know, electrons and neutrons and their, you know, their interaction with one another, it's all electrical. So we are electrical beings, and it's part of our, you know, we have this physical anatomy, obviously this flesh suit that we inhabit when our consciousness enters this realm, but we also have this light body, sometimes referred to as the light body, the subtle body, the prana body. They're all similar names for essentially the same thing. And within that light body, there is an anatomy. So the 7 chakras, and then a central column that runs up and down from our root, from our pelvic floor, all the way up to the crown of our head, where we're crowned with knowledge, you know, the 1,000-petaled lotus representing the enlightened human, like the Buddha, or the halo around his head representing his attainment of, you know, enlightenment and knowledge through this process. So going back to the caduceus, that staff represents that central column of energy, the sushumna within, and the sushumna, all along the sushumna are the 7 chakras from our root to our crown. And at the base of the pelvic floor is this dormant energy that is often represented as a coiled serpent. And when that energy begins to be awakened, It travels up the spinal column, as I said earlier, purifying the chakras, activating these centers of light within our light body, and undulating up our spine. And there are two other main channels of energy that run up and down the left and the right hand side of the body, the Ida and the Pingala channels, referring to the lunar energy and the solar energy, the feminine energy and the masculine energy. This is a realm of duality. And so it's all about harmonizing these two very opposite energies that are very attracted to one another, like masculine and feminine. I mean, sacred sexuality is all about, harmonizing these two energies of masculine and feminine until they come back into a place of union in the third eye and rise up into the crown chakra. So there's this ecstatic kind of experience, and literally for some people like a blast of light that occurs in the pineal gland in the third eye. And when these two polarities come together into union, because yoga is, of course, all about union. It's about the union of those polarities within each of us. We each have our masculine and our feminine sides. But even more than that, it's about remembering who we are, in a sense, and returning, ascending back to awareness of our sacred selves as these divine beings. So union is about union of this physical identity that we're inhabiting now with our higher self, or the part of our greater consciousness that exists within the heavenly realms, however you want to think of it, the larger consciousness system, with the great spirit, with God, with source energy, with universal energy, call it what you will, but I think it's all essentially the same thing. It's, it's where we came from as consciousness, as, divine sparks of light, literally photonic light, blasting into creation, into this realm. And it's where we're returning to. So we descend from that heavenly realm, according to yoga philosophy, both in India and in the Maya lands. And then through evolution, growth, life experience on the planet, practices of meditation, breath work, yoga, we consciously make our way back to realization of who we really are, of our divinity, if you like. So we ascend back, and we actually bring more to who we are, because we bring this life experience and the experience of many lifetimes previous to this that contributed to this awakening that may be happening now, because now is the time for it to happen, because now is the time getting back to what's going on with the sun, and the shift of the ages, the age of Aquarius, the golden age of light. We're incarnated now in a very special time where the opportunity for enlightenment is like right there in front of us. It's so attainable, and I think actually it's an experience that most of us are going to have in this lifetime, unless you are still kind of stubbornly holding on to the world of duality and kind of the old paradigm ways of thinking, which unfortunately so many of us are. But it's all okay, because we'll all get there eventually in our own time, in our own way. But many of us are here for this ride, this exciting kind of opportunity that is in front of us, and others are maybe it's next time round for them. So it's kind of like you see this divergence happening in the last 2 years of living through this flu-like thing. It's been really interesting to see like who's awake to the agenda, and what's really going on, and who's buying it and going along with it. And it's all fine, but it's been a really interesting period of time. And I think this whole experience of the past 2 years in itself has been an initiation process for a lot of us.
Definitely.
Because some of us were awake way before this came along too.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, I was a peace activist.
What do you mean by exactly? What do you mean by awake? Like, let's just share a bit
Yeah.
of your backstory of being a peace activist as a very young, very rebellious, naughty, lovely girl.
Yeah, well, you know, for some reason, I mean, I guess that this is the path that I chose, but I kind of awakened fairly early on in my life, in early 20s, to a lot of what I have now sort of grown into in this period of my life. But in my early 20s, I had an experience where I was laid off from my job. I was working in the fashion industry at that time as a clothing buyer, as an apprentice to a clothing buyer. And it was all very, you know, glamorous and interesting, but on one level, but, you know, it wasn't nourishing my soul. It sort of seemed very, very shallow. And so I was really seeking alternatives to that life. And in fact, my boss, the woman that I was apprenticed to, you know, turned out to be very enlightened being herself. And she introduced me to a lot of things like psychics and an amazing medium, David Young, who I had an experience with early on that really showed me that, you know, life after death is definitely a reality. I had unmistakable evidence you know, that was shared with me. Anyway, when I got laid off from this job, what I did was I read hundreds of books. I just like, okay, so I have my Christian upbringing. That was fascinating. It was actually a positive experience for me. I loved the music. I loved the old Bible stories of the, you know, the giants and, you know, just the many magical happenings that happen, you know, the burning bushes and like magical things that happened in the Bible. I was inspired by a lot of those things, and you know, really felt like Jesus was my, you know, my friend and all of that. And so, but I wanted more. I wanted to know more. So I started investigating. That's when I learned about, you know, what had happened with the Bible and the missing books of the Bible, and the book of Enoch in particular that talks about the, you know, the stairway of the gods and the, you know, celestial beings, and so many chariots of the gods, and learning lots about ETs and aliens and psychic activity behind the Iron Curtain, what was going on in Russia, and like, what's this theosophy thing? What's, you know, Rosicrucianism? What's, you know, just like all the forbidden kinds of topics, tarot and astrology. I started on a, you know, quite a serious study of astrology at that point in my life. So it kind of began back then, and then it became a geopolitical kind of a thing when I realized in the mid 80s the peril that the planet was in with the United States and Russia, and this ridiculous situation of all these ICBMs, you know, loaded and pointed at one another and on hair trigger alert, and any little mistake or it could have, you know, triggered a nuclear war leading to a nuclear winter and the destruction of all life on the planet.
Big boys with way too much power and not enough brain cells. Yeah. And you mentioned the books taken out of the Bible. It is public knowledge in the public forum that many of the ancient sacred books of the Bible, the Holy Bible, as it's known by, are manipulated and also removed and are in a library somewhere in a city in Italy. But I don't think you can, we're so censored to even talk about, you know, speak in normal terms like regular, normal human beings or beings. So we have to play their bullshit game. So I wanted to mention before we come back to the solar event that's not everyone, but some people are so frightened of, and I really don't want that to be allowed for myself and the people I just care about you so much. I don't want you living in fear, like, oh my God, there's going to be an event, I can't get to my kids, I can't get to my parents, what are we going to do? I don't agree with that fear mongering. It's very programmed to me. It's very deliberately staged to me. But you know, our worship of the sun, without the sun, we're not even here. It is the most precious thing. It is the most precious resource. And of course, if you look at it at certain points of day, you can harm can't even say the C word, the eyes. We've known that. But there is an ancient practice called sun programming or sundowning. You get up in the morning as the sun's coming up, you stare at the sun, you feed into the light codes, you feel into its energy, it lights you up. As it gets to a certain level and too bright, then you know, avert your eyes potentially. And then when the sun is going down, at the end of the day, at a certain period, it is safe to sit and gaze and breathe in. Like where I live in Costa Rica, every day there's like 300-400 people will come, all ages, every age,
So
from newborn to, well, I mean, it's a very young town. Not going to say the name of it, but
all the surfers.
Yeah, a lot of surfers, you know, but there's a lot of older people coming, like my age and older.
People with money.
Yeah. They sit on the beach and there's just a reverence that happens, you know. If you're in a winter place and it's cold, but you see the sun coming up and down, do it through your window, you know, but do it safely. And just wanted to remind us as we're trekking through the stories, the legends, the historic, you know, revelations that we're hearing from different cultures, I wanted to remind us about Egypt again. And there was a point where there was a pharaoh whose name was Akhenaten. Akhenaten is the father of Tutankhamun. Akhenaten was married to the princess Nefertiti. They created a singular religion. There were many different religions across the course of the Egyptian mythology and time and culture. And this is before the Greeks came and took over for 300 years. I'm not even going into the Ptolemaic system. We're going to stick with Akhenaten for a moment. He decided that the people in his new temples that he built in a different part of Egypt, we were only going to worship the sun god Ra, or the golden disc. Some say that's a UFO, a craft. Some say that's alien civilization. We'll never know until we truly know. But just opening the mind to the concept that we're going back around again right now. The ancient tales tell us there's going to be an event. But what do the arsewipes on your planet do? They try and put you into fear and take away the beauty. The Maya, the Aztecs, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Mesopotamians, Mesoamericans, the Crescent, Iran, Iraq. There's so much beauty, and we haven't even got into Scandinavia and the giants and the Vikings and the Scots and the Celts. The planet you live on is so beautiful and so rich in culture, and we just implore you, go looking. Don't think if you're a Christian, oh no, God wouldn't like that. Oh no, Jesus won't like that if I read up on the Celts or the Vikings, or, it's not true. You've been lied to. You've been lied to. So I really enjoyed the stories of Akhenaten, focusing on the sun, and even if, I don't myself aspire to any religion whatsoever, I think we're all here to experience certain beautiful things. And speaking of that, could you please share with us the most incredible, you taught me you told me this story. It was late at night in Costa Rica last year. It was dark. It was a starry night. There was no electricity, which is very common in Costa Rica. So we're just in the water, and starlit night, beautiful starlit night. And you told me about an experience you had with the sun. Can you share with us, please?
Yeah, it was a very magical experience. And yeah, so I told you already about when I met Hunbatsman, and at that time I was teaching yoga. I had my yoga studio back in Canada. I had been training yoga teachers at the Kripalu Center for Yoga and Health on the East Coast of the United States. So I was one of the teacher trainers there in the 90s and into the early 2000s, up to 2001 actually. And yeah, and so I was already very steeped in the tradition of meditation and yoga, and had been, practicing daily for lots and lots of years. So what I'm trying to say, I was really ready for this experience, because I saw that what happened in this experience that I'm going to describe, it affected all of us in this group of about 100 people in different ways, but certain of us within the group were activated in a particular kind of a way. And so that's sort of the context of it. And so what was happening is we were doing we were in the water. Well, okay, I need to back up a little bit. I need to remind me to go back to Tikal and meeting the shaman of the Guatemalan people in Tikal, because that had just happened the day before. But the instance that you're asking me about happened actually in the waters of Bacalar in Mexico. Fresh, beautiful, amazing freshwater lagoon with the incredible turquoise colored water. And anyway, we were in the water, maybe knee deep, and Quetzalcoatl was there, and also Hunbatsman was there, and they were kind of spontaneously leading this meditation with the sun. So we were chanting the name of the sun, and they were kind of, channeling, downloading, star languages, and, all kind in the invisible realms, which you see much more than I do. I'm sure all kinds of stuff was happening. And no doubt we were surrounded by magical beings and all these great teachers from the past. But anyway, we were in the water chanting the name of the sun, when suddenly there was an enormous frequency shift for me. And it was kind of familiar, a little bit familiar to experiences that I'd had in the yoga tradition, which is the yoga tradition at Kripalu, has its roots in Tantra and Kundalini yoga. Swami Kripalu was a Kundalini yogi. So it was similar, but different, because we were actually chanting the name of the sun. And so it was like, my experience was like having a laser beam implode my heart, a laser beam coming up, a stream of light coming from the sun, exploding my heart. And it kind of sent me into like the deepest backbend that I've ever been in. And my arms were outstretched, and I was like electrified in this, kneeling in the water in this backbend position for who knows how many minutes, like 15, 20 minutes. I mean, it just passed like that. And it was effortless, and it was ecstatic. And it just felt like this light was streaming through my body. And I was in a massively altered, ecstatic kind of state of reality at that point. And when we came out of it, we were all kind of swimming around in the water, and they're just like, ooh, what was that? And there were a few of us that really got hit with the energy. And we were the ones who were, ready for it for whatever reason. We were able to receive it, and others were just like, okay, let's go have lunch. Time for lunch. That was a nice experience. On to the next kind of thing, and everything in between. So anyway, that experience really stayed with me, and I was in this expanded state where I felt huge. I felt like this gigantic being, and I could feel out in all directions, and everything was love. Like everything was the frequency of love. My heart was so blown wide open, and we were all, we were exchanging love with one another, and not in any sexual sense, but like in an energetic kind of. People sometimes get, even now, they get understand when this word love is used, but it's actually a frequency rather than like I love you kind of an experience, right? And so that frequency, that energetic experience stayed with me for a couple of weeks. And I remember going on the bus. I decided I would take a bus ride and then a ferry ride to Isla Mujeres, where there is a temple on the tip of Isla Mujeres dedicated to the island of women.
Yes, good. Thank you for translating.
Yes,
the island of women. Yeah.
Dedicated to the goddess Ishel, who was venerated by the Maya. She's the goddess of childbirth and sexuality and the healing arts and medicine. And I later named one of my daughters.
Who painted this beautiful woman?
Yes, this moon goddess sitting behind us, no question about it. She's so talented, my daughter.
Called Asha.
Yeah. And so everywhere, I just was looking out the window of the bus with this silly smirk on my face, because everything was so beautiful. Even the traffic and the chaos and, the craziness, it was all just beautiful to me from this altered perspective. And I went back home to my yoga studio and tried to convey, what had happened. And it was a really rarefied state for me, and it lasted for a couple of weeks when I went home, and just gradually in my day-to-day interactions and dealing, in the business realm, it subsided, and I kind of returned to ordinary consciousness. But it was a very profound experience that stayed with me. And, when I look back on it now, and we are thinking about things like, what could this solar event be about? What would a solar flash, for example, or a huge solar flare feel like? I think for those of us who are in a certain state of consciousness and awareness, it may the experience may be a little like what I experienced so many years ago.
So beautiful.
Like rather than something to fear and something that's going to make us neurotic and crazy, it actually has the potential to awaken us, awaken our hearts, and open us to this expanded sense of who we are, like truly part of our ascension process, if you'd like to think of that. Think of it that way.
And receiving light codes, and like, do you remember last year we'd sit on the beach in Costa Rica, and I'd be like I could literally see, as the sun's coming down, gigantic purple doorways inside the sun. Do you remember I'd say, do you see that doorway? But I do have a clairvoyant. I do see the dimensions and different layers. I always have. It's just how I see. So I don't ever assume everyone can see what I see. I've learned that. Also, people choose to shut themselves down and not see, because they're scared or they're programmed. Oh, don't see, that's the devil. It's not, it's nonsense. Now is the time. If we're still listening to our religious structures and our scientific structures, we're never going to grow. We're never going to absorb all the different layers of everything that's been there for us, you know. And we're told all these people, the Mesoamericans, etc., everything we're discussing, Maya, Aztecs, Egyptians, Greeks, you know, Celtics, etc. We're told it was all in this year and that century. I don't believe any of that. I think every single timeline has been messed with and altered, and we've been told so many lies. And can we actually manage to think that the truth is that the ancient brothers and sisters that were on this planet were less intelligent than us? Seriously, it's an insult. We couldn't build a pyramid like they did in the Egyptian days if our lives depended on it. Mathematical perfection with all the machinery
aligned with the Pleiades and the solstices and equinoxes, and I mean just the mathematics and the knowledge of architecture that went into building Chichen Itza and the Temple of Kukulkan, with this phenomena that happens like clockwork year after year at a certain time of the equinox, with the light, you know, coming down and creating this configuration. I mean, it's gobsmacking, you know, mind-boggling in its complexity.
Exactly. You know, when I was in Egypt, there was a temple at Abyginia. It's a Ramses the Great. They say it's the Ramses from the Bible. So his beloved was Nefertari, not Nefertiti. And this Ramses the Great, what I like chatting about him was because I did a little broadcast with the amazing historian. Guys, if you've never heard of Freddie Silver, he is a gift to our planet. I've done one broadcast with him so far. He's so busy. Freddie Silver is S-I-L-V-A. Crop circles, gematria, the legends of the gods, the resurrections. His latest book is The Secrets of Scotland's Hidden Past. And there's a broadcast on my channel, but it was the worst one. The sound was messed with. They tried so hard to mess with that one. But he's a bloody genius. And I just go look, go search.
But so much incredible information in that part of the world. I mean, it's a whole other story, isn't it?
And all matches and meets together. Does. That's my point. It's like, we can't keep going, oh, that was then, and there's no, stop putting them in different compartments and drop them all in the same timeline for yourself.
Yes, as universal knowledge. And that's how I've come to understand yoga. It's a gift from the gods, from our star brothers and sisters, whether they're in the Pleiades or Sirius or Andromeda or wherever they are. This technology, this spiritual technology of yoga and meditation, the working with the prana body, is obviously, to me now, universal in nature. It's been gifted to us. It's been gifted to different cultures in different times, in different ways. The Cherokee, the Japanese cultures, the Chinese and their dragon cultures, the in India and Vedic culture, the Maya lands in Egypt, and you know, it's all over the planet. And it's you know, just like we all breathe the same air, we all respond energetically and have this, you know, potential within us that is common to the human race, wherever you happen to be incarnated on the planet. You know, we're all the same at that level.
Definitely. So with Ramses the Great, when you look around Egypt, you'll notice that when people say this is Ramses the Great, 9 times out of 10, if you look at his knee, because these monoliths are just 50, 60 feet tall, some taller. And he was bit of a vain man apparently, and liked to have sculptures made of himself everywhere and there. But you'll notice one of the ways to recognize him, you know, symbolically, is by his knee is Nefertari. There's an image of his wife, his first wife, who he dearly loved. He had lots of others. That was the day for the pharaoh. See the you know, the superior race or whatever it was they were thinking about themselves at the time. But his temple that he built in a part of Egypt was sinking into the water. And in the 1960s, a team of scientists and archaeologists took this whole temple apart, stone by stone, and reassembled it using the mathematic calculations, because what would happen, and still does, even though they've moved it, this is how we learned from the ancient Egyptians, as you said, at a certain point, the winter solstice, you know, when the sun moves at a certain point, the sun will hit and it will go through the front door of that temple. And there are monolithic columns all the way through to the very back. And at the very back, there are four deities, and Ramses sat himself there too. But the point is this: the sun hits once a year at this certain time and shines in the eyes or the pineal gland of every single seated god.
Yes.
It is so exciting. And I don't know whether any of you have heard of that. And of course, a lot of you will have, but to witness it is beyond. But again, those mathematical solar connections are from the beginning of time. They're not new, they're ancient. And we have the right to be taught this information, to remember it, to think about it. So for me, again, I want to come back to you on your solar techniques and see if there's a mantra you can gift us, or there's something else you can help us with in the fear of the solar flash. But for me, what I often will do is sit and face the sun and close my eyes and imagine all of that beautiful sunlight, sun ray coming right through my third eye, right into my pineal gland. The pineal gland right now is the way we time travel. It's the way we bring health into the body, wealth of the mind. It is one of the most gifted, and it is our God connection, or our God's connection, whatever you want to call it. Doesn't matter. Don't be offended if you're stuck to a religion, because you're not going to grow. You're not going to grow. I was the most evangelical, Pentecostal, you know, till I was 7. And then I realized, oh dear, these adults are frightened of going to hell if they don't do as the Bible tells them. So, you know, again, you can choose to be insulted, offended. That's up to you. It's not, I'm not here to do that. I'm just here to bring amazing people like Asha so we can share our knowledge together. She's brought something so new today to so many of you. And she's a gift. She's another gift on my small but mighty channel. Could you share any kind of, we haven't practiced or rehearsed this at all, so I didn't preempt this question, but did you have a reference book in particular, a mantra that people can say when they're connecting, or a practice to connect to the sun and the solar rays, so we're not scared of a solar event that's going to wipe us all out, because that's not going to happen?
Yeah, well, I do. But maybe before we get to that, I'm not sure how we're doing in terms of time, but I would love to tell the story of the Guatemalan shaman and relay what he shared with us at the pyramid, or the amazing pyramids of Tikal. I mean, there's so many amazing pyramids in Mesoamerica, but if you ever have the opportunity to go to Tikal, run.
Can you spell it? It's got a slightly unusual spelling.
Tikal. Just stunningly beautiful, aside from everything else. Anyway, during this period in the 90s, this was now 1999, I was still traveling and studying with Hunbatsman and visiting a lot of the pyramid centers, and we had the opportunity to go to Tikal as a group, an international group, a large group, again, around 100 of us, I'm not exactly sure how many, to do a ceremony with the esteemed Guatemalan shaman. There are many gifted shamans in Guatemala, but the head of the shamanic community at that time was just a lovely, dear old man named Don Alejandro Cerrillo Perez, otherwise known as Wandering Wolf, because his name is quite a mouthful for us English speakers. Anyway, we had an opportunity to meet with him and to do a fire ceremony, a traditional fire ceremony led by Don Alejandro at the base of the pyramids, in the center between the pyramids of Tikal. And he shared one of the most inspiring speeches. His speech was one of the most inspiring before we did the ceremony that I think I've ever heard. And he shared a lot about their Mayan culture and their traditions, but one of the things that he prepared us for, one of the things that he said was how, you know, as holding the rank that he does in the shamanic community in Guatemala, how all these experts from the Western world are always coming to visit him, you know, these PhDs that want to know, pick his brain about the archaeology and the history, people from NASA who want to know what he knows about cosmology and the stars, and he's like, you know, why is that? You know, how is it that I have all these knowledge? I haven't attended any of your universities. I don't have any of these plaques or degrees sitting on my wall. But he said, what I have learned is I have the capacity to access the source of all of this knowledge directly through my cosmic consciousness, through this expanded, way of being that we've been talking about, you know, attaining or moving towards as the human race. And so they come to him to receive his knowledge and his wisdom, because he's recognized as the carrier of all of this, and it's just available to him. He can access, you know, the field of knowledge and just pull down what he needs. Anyway, so that was amazing. He's like, I'm a doctor, I'm an astronomer, I'm a healer, I'm a mathematician, I'm this scientist and that scientist. I'm all of these things, not because I have your degrees, but because I can access that knowledge. So that was one thing that he shared. And then he spoke about this special time that was approaching, you know, the golden age of light, how, you know, the current age, we're in sort of the dark ending chaotic phase of the previous age, when everything is kind of falling apart and there's a lot of chaos, and most of us are very disconnected from nature and from the natural cycles, and also the cosmic cycles of, you know, the stars and what the Maya were in touch with all of their calendars. And so he was encouraging us and imploring us actually to go back to our homes and back to our communities and do whatever we could do to help to heal the earth and to get grounded again, get rooted in nature again, to help this process of, transformation that we're in the midst of, this birthing of a new reality that was quickly approaching. And a lot of people thought it would happen, you know, with 2012, there was a lot of expectation around that date. And it was a big kind of disappointment for a lot of people. You know, there was expectation that something dramatic would happen at that time. But something did happen. I think there was a shift, but it was much more subtle than what people were expecting. But so he was preparing for us for this period of time when there would be unusual activity of the sun coming just before this new age of light begins to be birthed and come into being, and all these changes would happen within our bodies and our energetic bodies and our minds when we ascend and expand in consciousness and awareness. And so, you know, he talked about how this process of this change that, you know, would come about in humanity, this change that would happen with the sun, it really depended on us, how this, it could be a very gentle transition, or it could be more chaotic and more confusing, maybe even more earth changes and, you know, things that could be very scary for humanity. But it really just depends on us and how we navigate these next few years. But that when this event would happen, that it was really important to remain calm, you know, gather with your families, meditate, you know, be at peace, know that this is part of a natural cycle. He talked about in his oral tradition and shamanic tradition of the Maya, they have memory of this happening at the end of the last cycle, and these great star beings and teachers that came to help them in this time of tumult and transition and, you know, some chaos. And the last time there was this shift of the ages, or the birthing of a new sun and a new solar cycle. So he talked about that. And but he spoke of this event, if you want to call it, or this happening that would occur with the sun, not so much as a flash or a solar flare, or some of the ways that people like David Wilcock and others in the community are talking about it. Linda Paris also has some intel.
I haven't seen, I haven't, I heard someone said the other day, oh, have you, I used to watch David Wilcock a lot, and I really enjoyed so much of his delivery, and him as a, he seems like a really heart-centered person. I haven't met him and I don't know him yet. Someone said, oh my God, David, it might have been you actually. Oh my God, David Wilcock put out another broadcast, and he does long ones that is very
hours.
but he really, you know, he really does put so much thought, and he's got so much experience about different things, and you know, we all need to be sharing right now. And someone said, maybe you, that he put out information on the solar energies, the solar information, solar intel right now. So I haven't watched it, but I think we all have a juicy, those of us that know we've, you know, we've got platforms and we need to use them lovingly. And if we can help protect and raise up, because once we go into fear, guys, we're screwed, we're stuffed. You can't function when you're stuck in fear. You know, oh my God, it's going to happen. There's not going to be earthquakes and tsunamis, and people aren't going to burn to death, they're not going to die. It's not true. But that planet Earth herself is shifting in her solar axis. Physically, her physical heavenly presence is physically moved, also proved by science, also measured by something called the Schumann resonance. There are other measurements also out there that are not so public. Of course there are. You know, this isn't the first time, as to your point, my love, that this planet has had some kind of a transformational happening. But this time we've all got mobile phones, and we've all got Wi-Fi, and you know, thanks to Nikola Tesla, excuse me, we're so lucky. And we've got more awareness, but it also puts us in danger, I feel, of being more frightened and not evolving in ourselves. We don't evolve or grow through fear. It's not possible. Fear is the most stunting emotion you can have.
Limited frequency.
Yeah, it's emotional paralysis. You're locked in place. You can't. Whereas if you're like just expanding and you're, I mean, if anybody wants to know, for me, the greatest sentence, if you are a religious Christian Catholic person, the greatest sentence I've ever read is, God is love. And the love frequency, as you were saying earlier, is the most powerful frequency. And if that truly is what God is, I'm all about it. I'm all about it. Did we get to your mantra?
Well, just to finish up, Dolly, how he described this event, rather than an event that would be like a flash of light or something like that, what he described was a time of several days of darkness, when the sun would actually darken, and the possibility of a second sun appearing. And this idea of a second sun is, you know, it shows up in many different traditions, and there are astronomers actively looking for the partner to our sun, actually buried deep within the Milky Way galaxy. There is said to be this partner to our sun, and it's obscured most of the time by nebulae and other things, you know, that we can't actually see it. But at this particular time, when the shift happens, this shift of the ages, the partner to our sun aligns between the galactic center and our sun, and actually darkens our sun. It's like an eclipse that occurs, except it's not a regular solar eclipse. It's like a galactic eclipse. And so he was preparing us. There may be this experience of darkness for a few days, and you know how scary that could be if you weren't aware of what was going on. But the way he described it, it was a very short period of time. So, you know, less than a week sort of thing. But to be prepared for something like that, no one really knows when it's going to happen exactly. Some people are feeling that it's very close now. Others thought it was going to happen in 2012, but you know, here we are 10 years later. Maybe we're on the cusp of it. It could be very close. It could be decades into the future. We don't really know. But when this event happens, it's like a time for celebration, really. It's like our birth into cosmic consciousness, and it's going to have an impact on each and every one of us. And, you know, those who've done some preparation and have, you know, an awareness of what's happening will be able to make the most of this opportunity. of the, this um, this opening of a portal really to the galactic center, like I mean, never mind our sun, there's like tremendous energy that comes there, but imagine the great central sun at the center of the Milky Way galaxy, and an eclipse that involves, that energy and our partner star within the galaxy. So pretty mind-blowing stuff. And, I just really wanted to share that because it comes from such an incredible source, Wandering Wolf, the great Guatemalan shaman who must be very elderly now, if he's even still alive. Actually, I'm not sure about that. He may have passed on. So yeah, that was his advice of how to navigate these times. And in terms of what people can do or what comes from the Yokamaya tradition, you already talked about solar sun gazing and the benefits of sun gazing and how it can activate the pineal gland. And one of the practices that we would often do together as a group with Hunbat's men, particularly on sun days, the day of the sun, was to acknowledge and honor the sun and kiss the sun. We called it kissing the sun, where you raise your hands and you feel the warmth of the sun. And you breathe it in through your nostrils, and you take that energy all the way down into your belly, all the way down into your root, and back again through the crown of your head. And imagine the breath going all the way up to the sun. And, do that several times to align your energy with the sun, and begin to visualize the 7 suns, the 7 centers of light that you have within your physical, your energy body, and the rooted down into the earth. That's very important to ground your energy down into the mother, into planet Earth. So visualize all of that and breathe in the energy of the sun, and imagine your breath bringing light down through the crown of your head, through each of the energetic centers, enlightening and enlivening each of those centers, and then returning again. And as you do that, to connect even more effectively with the sun, you can chant the Mayan name for the sun, which is King. And that particular mantra, the name for the sun, helps to connect us with the solar being, the frequency of the sun, and beyond that, our solar brothers and sisters in the Pleiadian, in the star system. So we would chant the name of the sun 7 times and visualize the solar energy entering the crown, the third eye, the throat, the heart, the solar plexus, the belly, the root chakra, and activating each of those 7 chakras, those 7 centers. So we would chant that 7 times, and then we would chant 7 more for our solar brothers and sisters in the Pleiades, acknowledging the solar brothers and sisters, and just a very, beautiful tradition. And so the breath is so important in Yokamaya and also in the yogic tradition. I know you teach a lot about the belly breath, but the breath connects us physically to our energetic being, and the breath of life is so instrumental to the transformation process that we've been talking about. So yogic breath work that's very balancing, like in the yoga tradition from India, we have the alternate nostril breath that's practiced very slowly, breathing in through one nostril and out the other, inhaling and exhaling, and balancing those masculine, feminine polarities we were talking about, the Ida and Pingala glands, and bringing the focus of attention up to the third eye. So those are some things that are very simple to practice, even just acknowledging the sun every sunrise or sunset, or whenever you have the opportunity, or doing a little ceremony for yourself on sun days to really work more actively with the sun. And things like solar gazing, within 30 minutes of the sunrise or the sunset, you can gaze directly at the sun quite safely. But, start small, start with maybe 5-minute increments and build it up from there. But that's a way to decrystallize the pineal gland and to activate the pineal again and to receive those floats.
I know there's been a lot of noise. There was a beautiful love dove earlier. There's obviously some vehicle, a small plane went over. There's music playing. We really hope you can hear us. And if you can't, then put on the translating thing. Click on that little square box and it will come up with because there's so much information that's just so special and so sacred in so many different levels, in this one broadcast with Asha. You mentioned the Pleiades, and guys, for some of you that don't know, the Pleiades is a star system, and it's also called or known as the Seven Sisters, although there are more, but largely that's what we see physically, and it's off to the right of Orion's belt, if I remember correctly. And I just love that we brought up the Pleiades and that you shared that we are the 8th star. The Pleiades considers us the 8th star. And of course, we're using earth words. Pleiadian is an earth word, Andromedan is an earth word. They have their own words for this planet. When you were chanting Ke'ing, obviously we can look at that and say that sounds like king. When we're connecting to the sun, people call it the sun god. There's so many different ways of symbology that make us think or invite us to entertain an idea about something we may not have thought about before. What's amazing to me is that lovely little beautiful gift treasure of bringing in the sun through the third eye, down the spine and up again. Those of you that have heard of Yogananda, Yogananda was a Swami in India, and he came to the West. He was charged with bringing what's known as Kriya Yoga, Kriya, Kriya Yoga to the West. But this is one of the things, and one of the reasons why I also wanted to speak with you and share the Yoga Maya, is that when we think of yoga, and there are so many Christians who are like, oh, that's the devil. It really isn't. It's just such nonsense to say that. It's just robbing you of learning about other cultures on the planet and other helpful practices. But not every yoga practice is about the asanas. It's about the physical movements. And Kriya Yoga, that was brought to the West from India via a beautiful man who was given the name Yogananda, is about breathing in from the first chakra, the base of the Kundalini, the coiled serpent, and bringing that energy up the spine through all the chakras and out through the third eye and down again. And that was a religion or a practice that was hidden. It was secret. It was sacred, like the Greek mystery schools, like the Egyptian mystery schools, like the Covenant of the Ark. Oh my God, the wind's getting up. Mariah, we love you, Mariah. So it's so beautiful to kind of marry all these different religions and sacred truths together, and no one's going to die I'm not going to die for sharing Kriya Yoga with you, that some of the practices being the same. You're not going to be slain and for sharing the Maya Yoga, and we're two blue-eyed blondes that really in the state of the world are some of the most hated minority humans. And but it doesn't matter. That was because of the patriarchal dominance, and there's a lot of matriarchal dominance there too, that don't want us humans as humanity, or the different beautiful colors and realms we are, or the hybrids that we are, to have knowledge that we marry it together. We bring all the ancient traditions and the ancient vibrations from the earth below to the earth above. And that's what our conference is about in October. I'm going to spend a moment sharing with you the greatest event of 2022 on planet Earth is Orlando, Florida, October 21, 22, and 23. There's going to be the most amazing speakers on stage. Alex Collier, our Andromedan contactee, Elena Danan, the Earth emissary for the Galactic Federation of Worlds, bringing information off planet. We're going to learn about technology that's been kept from us, that our brothers and sisters upstairs have. Asha will be there on stage. She will be standing next to Ketsa Shah. who we've been talking about, who we went to Chichen Itza with, who you had two beautiful Gemini Mayan children with. Guys, Vivian Chevet, who is a galactic hybrid human. She's a flipping hybrid, living in a human body, emanating essence and resonance and frequency from the star system of Arcturus. Who else do we have? We have Jean-Charles Moyen. He is a French secret space soldier taken by Earth military, traded off planet.
Huna Flash.
Huna Flash, who I'm in Mexico to visit with Maya, oh my God, with Asha, but also Huna Flash, also known as Ma'utataki, an indigenous Maori from a long ancestral line of elders who has gone around the world, still does. He's got thousands, like over 25,000 friends. He calls them Hunas, who go through a ceremony with him, a Lemurian calendar ceremony. And this is the 5 again, the 5th sun going into the 6th sun, the Aztecs, the Mayas, the Lemurian information that Huna Flash is sharing. And then over the weekend, we're going to be doing water ceremony, fire ceremony, remembering those that have lost their lives, however they lost their lives over the last 2 or 3 years. There's going to be David Mahoney there. Dr. Christiane Northrup will be there, that beautiful, beloved, globally known, beautiful female doctor, and she's so much more. Mel Kay's not making it, sadly. Send Mel Kay our love. She's having a procedure done. She's exhausted and needs, not going to be there, and that's really sad. Sad to miss you, Mel. Lots of love to you if you see this. So many people, and we have Tony Rodriguez. Tony Rodriguez was sold into a satanic family. He was traded off Planet 2. He was traded onto Ceres. Now, it sounds so ludicrous and crazy. Of course it does. It only sounds crazy because we've all been told that we can't think about anything off planet. Or just do as we're told. Well, we're not doing as we're told anymore. You know, we're all thinking for ourselves and we're all sharing information. And so we should. Anyway, so get your tickets now. I'll put the links underneath this broadcast. They're always underneath every broadcast. But it's Galactic Informers. GalacticSpiritualInformers.com is the website. GalacticSpiritualInformers.com. Come in October. Come meet with Asha. Come meet with all the people that we've just sat and shared with you.
And so, thank you so much for pulling this together, for just, you know, being the one to, you know, take the torch and gather all of these amazing beings together in one place, in the flesh, heart to heart, you know, human contact with some of these amazing beings on the planet that have so much to share. And, you know, one of the things that Hunbatsman was fond of saying, Elder Hunbatsman, to all of us blonde-haired, blue-eyed people coming, and people, Oriental people coming, and European people coming, and African people coming to the Maya lands to, you know, to receive this information, he would say, he would welcome us as the Maya returning, because perhaps in this lifetime we're blonde-haired, blue-eyed, but perhaps in other lifetimes we were indigenous Maya, and that's why we're so receptive to this information and able to be passing it on now. But, you know, we are remembering our spiritual heritage. We're remembering who we really are. We're coming together as awakening humanity in greater and greater numbers every day through programs like Dani's, through conferences, and so much that's going on. We're remembering who we are as these great cosmic beings who are having a very temporary and yet precious human experience in this realm, in this physical world that we inhabit. And, you know, to kind of keep that in perspective too, like how vast our history is and how vast our consciousness is. And this is just this one precious little sliver of time when we're here to learn and to remember how to love, how to grow from fear to love. And it's just a beautiful time to be alive and nothing to be afraid of. Sure, there's going to be some chaos. There may be some losses and personal losses and, you know, sacrifices that occur along the way. But to keep all of that in perspective and to really embrace the beauty and the just incredible moment that we are living together right now as the human collective community, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. And, you know, I there is a team working with me. There's no way I could undertake this amazing conference, but I promise you I was completely guided by spirit, by God, by Jesus, by angels, by whoever.
Clearly.
So guided, and that the people that said yes, said yes. We cannot take on any more speakers. We have the full capacity for 3 days to keep you engaged and busy with these beautiful, beautiful men and women and hybrids of all kinds. But the audience themselves, you know who you feel, you know who you are. And there are people coming to sit in audience with other energies, and they're going to be out in the public for the first time in a long time. And you know what I mean if this resonates with you. And so we welcome you. And for me, this is going to be a literal physical shift in consciousness on our planet too. A gathering of hundreds and hundreds of people all in one place. We're bringing again the elders, the indigenous and the galactics together, sharing their sacred tongues, their sacred mantras, their sacred history of planet Earth, because we haven't been told everything. And so now we're letting everything out. It's just so exciting. I have a beautiful, wonderful, amazing, talented team working with us. So it's not just me. I just had the idea, and it's flowering and evolving so beautifully. So my darling Asha, final words to our beautiful audience that will see this.
Well, remain open, remember who you are, that you're here to love and to learn and to evolve and embrace this beautiful journey that we're on personally and collectively. And again, gratitude to you, Dani, my dear friend. I was with Dani when she conceived of the idea of this conference, and I don't think I said it out loud at the time, but inside I was like, "Got to be kidding! You've never done this before, and you're going to plan a conference, 1,700 people, and all in one place." And I mean, it's a huge vision that you received of like the possibility of this conference, and you were. I mean, and I think of what I said to you at the time was, if anyone can pull it off, you can.
Oh my goodness, you're very
Dani,
sweet. You're very sweet. Well, I remember thinking, if I could, if my Dr. Michael Sala would say yes, if Alex Collier would say yes, if Elena Danan, who's never spoken in public to this point, would say yes, then maybe Brad Olson and Tony Rodriguez and Sherry Divband and Vivian Chabot, Laura Eisenhower and Sunbo True Brother, who has the secret knowledge of the Sasquatch, one of the greatest experiences of our time, in my opinion. But I also do want to point a reference. There's wonderful, wonderful guys, Michael Harrell and Brian Bland, and they have a show on Facebook, and it's called Pork and Beans, and it's also on YouTube, Pork and Beans, and they too are Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yeti experiences, and they have a channel where they bring on other experiences, and a lot of us are really waking up to that frequency of what these Yeti, these Sasquatch truly are. And I'm not going to give the secret away. You have to come to the conference and listen to Sunbo True Brothers, true experiences. So let us close.
And maybe just before you close, if you wouldn't mind, if people are looking for more information about Yokamaya and some of the things that I offer on my webpage, I'm not sure if you're going to put that in the notes.
Oh, yes,
but it's ashagayledieleman.com. I have an online course that's all about raising your frequency, and practical techniques and tools for doing, because we talk a lot about the importance of raising your frequency, but there's not a lot of information shared about the practical aspects that very often, and exactly how to do that. So I have an online course called Raise Your Frequency, and you can also learn about Yokamaya and some retreats that we'll be planning into the future around Yokamaya. So you're welcome to that information.
So those of you, you go, where's the information? It's always right underneath. It's right underneath. So you click on the video you're watching and just look underneath, and there's all the information. But again, this is Asha Gayle with an E, or Y-E, Gayle, Dieleman, which is a Dutch name. You might want to spell it. So for those of you with a pen and paper that want to write it down.
It's DIELEMAN.com. So it's Asha, my yoga name, Gayledieleman.com.
So, and like I say, it will be there. Thank you so much, darling. And to you guys out there, thank you for being with us. I don't even know how long this broadcast is, and I really don't care. I'm so proud to be with my friend. I'm so proud for her to share the information, her lifelong learning with you, and for us to bring in all of the other greats and talk about Copernicus and Galileo and, you know, Nostradamus, and bring in all the different layers, because it's time. It's time for us to just enjoy and play and play. And remember, not everything you see online is the truth. So it's time to discern. Anyway, I send you my love.
As do I.
And I'll see you soon.